So welcome back to the channel, and if you've been following ideas around the law of assumption in particular, then you know the core promise that assumption, although false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. And so that's a pretty big promise, and it kind of sounds simple enough, doesn't it? But let's be honest, for 99% of people, it simply fails and it's not working. And over the last 30 years of spiritual development and manifestation, it just becomes more and more obvious why this is failing. Unfortunately, people get trapped in the loop of robotic manifesting and kind of mental diet exhaustion. They just keep doing this thing and it doesn't work. But the more you understand how manifesting really works, initially, it becomes more obvious why these teachings are skipping a very fundamental foundation and why they're never going to work for absolutely everybody. So with Neville's present techniques as they're shared, effectively we're trying to build a skyscraper on a swamp, if you like. And in this video, we're going to recap the basics of manifestation, going to look at the evolution of it so that you can actually stop lying to yourself, trying to assume something that isn't true, and you've got an actual understanding of how it works. So we're going to talk about the what comes next, the missing piece that bridges the thinking of a desire to actually living from it and experiencing it in terms of the law of assumption. So the structural flaw, the big one in the modern law of assumption teaching, is what I'm going to call cosmetic assumption. Now, most teachers tell you to simply change your thoughts or embody them enough and reality will change by itself. I had that in the comments the other day. This person has failed for years to manifest anything. People are told that if you want the money, just say to yourself, I am wealthy, and kind of try and feel it. But there's a big problem with this because you're still trying to plant a new seed in soil that's filled with toxic old beliefs. And when you assume a new state, while your core identity is still rooted in the old one, you create a lot of internal friction and that causes problems. The nervous system actually views this new assumption as very confusing and also ultimately a threat to your safety in some cases. And so this is why you feel anxious when you try and affirm. And obviously you're not persisting. What you're actually doing is trying to perform. You're pretending in an unconscious way. Like so many people, you're wearing a mask of wealth over a face and a body of poverty. And the 3D world only reflects the bigger energy, the face, if you like. It doesn't reflect the mask that you're pretending to have. So let me give you a clear example. A woman came for coaching. She spent 6 months saying, I am wealthy every single morning. Poor lady. And of course, she had vision boards. She had put it on the fridges. She had affirmations on her mirror where she got ready in the morning. But her bank balance, well, was zero. Nothing changed it at all, and she felt like a failure, of course. So in truth, she was trying to convince herself. She was lying to herself without an awareness of the process, lying to herself because part of herself didn't believe that it was possible. And of course, she's not alone. We see this pattern with thousands and thousands of students. And so if you were ever trying to manifest something and you just felt like you were lying or pretending, hiding from part of yourself and just repeating all these manifestations, well, let me know in the comments because that's why it fails. And the thing that cures this failing is understanding why it doesn't work. You can avoid the friction altogether when you know the process that has to happen before you even start the assumption. So let's look at the missing first step, and I'm going to try to put it in slightly different language. Before you assume a new state, you've got to de-identify from the current one. So in the 30 years I've been studying this, I realized that most people's beliefs are very sticky. Their idea of who they are is very sticky, i.e. they're really attached to their current problems for their own reasons, their current bank balance, their current heartbreaks. They view the old self as the real self, as the only self. So when they try and create a new state, they're overlaying it on top of a very messy bunch of energies. And Neville talked about dying to the old self. It's become a bit of a metaphor. But I would encourage you to not think of it as a metaphor. Think of it as a mechanical necessity. It's a step that Neville did not stress enough for some reason. I don't know why. But the missing step is what we can think of as a neutralization step, where you neutralize your old ideas, your old beliefs, separate yourself out from your old reality before you can lay a new one. So before you say, I am rich, you've got to first reach the state of saying, I'm not my beliefs. You've got to take a neutral stance, remove the power from the old beliefs in your energy, in your mind. And so there's a few steps to do that, but what you need to do is remove yourself from the old state. If you're not your beliefs, if you're not your feelings, then your identity is free to be able to create what it wants. It's not a victim to these old ideas. You have to be willing to let that go. You have to be willing to become more kind of no thing before you can add anything. Because if you don't clear the old canvas first, all the new assumptions just become some big blurry mess on top of the old ones that you want to get rid of and change. And so if you're watching this and you're thinking, great, we've got some mechanics here, then this is what we do on the channel. I'm really keen to break down the stuff that actually works and not just the stuff that sounds good, the spiritual theatre. So if you like that kind of thing, I'd encourage you and invite you to subscribe so that you're not spinning your wheels on theory that doesn't deliver. So here's how you're going to actually do this. This is the mechanics of what works to guarantee success. First one is the observation phase. Instead of fighting an old belief or dramas in your life or anything at all, observe it as a third party. You need to begin to disconnect from it. You can say, I'm aware I've got a lack of money or my health or relationships. Take a step back from the drama, take a step back from the beliefs and the emotions, create the space. Second one, you need to begin to connect to the creator self. So instead of focusing on this is who I am and my old story, you might spend 5 minutes a day saying, I am not my beliefs, I am not my story, I just am who I am. Because you need to connect with that creator self in a more neutral way, removing the old story, removing limiting ideas, so that when you lay a new foundation, it's on clarity. And doing this detaches your consciousness from the current 3D circumstances in those first two steps. And the next one is about conscious implementation. So you've disconnected yourself from your reality, you've removed the emotional charge. What you need to do now, only after you get that sense of detachment, knowing that you're not your beliefs or emotions, that's key. These are just tools that you use to create the reality that you want. Then you get into the assumption, and it might be useful to place yourself in a light trance. You can say to yourself, okay, I'm going to place myself in a slight hypnotic trance and then do the assumption work. You might get a floaty feeling that Neville describes sometimes. But at that point, that's when you introduce your new assumptions, the beliefs and the feelings. And when you do it in this order, then the assumption work doesn't meet the resistance because there's no old self fighting it. So you aren't changing your life. You're reimagining your existence from a blank slate. And that's key. You've got to go back a little bit to go forward effectively. And so, of course, here is the thing. Understanding this intellectually and actually putting it into practice is a complete other thing. That's where the rubber hits the road, if you like, living it every single day. And so I'm hosting live streams every single Wednesday on this channel. The next one is this evening, and it's called Consciousness, How to Work with Your Beliefs so Manifestation Works. Every Wednesday, there's a consciousness clinic to cover different conversations about the nature of reality, who we are, and how we can create the life that we want. And we do live exercises on the consciousness clinic on exactly how to change your life, your beliefs. And if you do struggle with that, then you can download the Belief Blueprint, a complete 5-day training on how you can begin to change your ideas and understand your beliefs, and the links in the description. So if you found this useful, do hit the like button, think about subscribing. It does help the algorithm show this to other people who are struggling with their manifestation. And if you want to go deeper into Neville Goddard's work, how I applied this over 10 years of study, and other lessons that you can learn, watch my previous Neville Goddard video right here. Subscribe for more deep dives into the mechanics of reality. Now, take some time to go into that kind of silence, neutralize those old ideas, find your I am creator self, and I'll see you in the next video, or even better, I'll see you live on a Wednesday night stream on the channel. Take care.